Texas Tech, Arizona State, BYU, Utah, even Houston. The Big 12 owes all of you a massive apology because they just got this one thing very, very wrong. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We will start. BYU and Utah play on the same weekend as like Georgia and Alabama, Ohio State and Oregon. Why do we do this? Why can't we have a rivalry weekend like everybody else? Why are TCU and Texas Tech not playing every year? Why are Baylor and Texas Tech not playing every year? Why are we burying our best matchups on weekends that have games like Oregon and Ohio State? I don't get it. I just want a rivalry weekend again. I want to be normal. Can we just be normal for a second, please? Then The Athletic released a new poll, preseason way too early Big 12 poll. They picked BYU to win the Big 12. Look, I'm wearing the hat today. I get it. I appreciate the Cougs as much as the next guy, but have any of you heard of Texas Tech? Has anyone ever heard of Texas Tech? And how are they not number one? Sorry, I'm opening today's show with so much angst. I didn't mean to be so mean. But then SEC's recruiting is taking a massive hit. It is at an all-time struggle bus situation. I just think we need to have a conversation with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction about how the SEC is not king anymore. And that's kind of awesome. I kind of like that. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. By the way, I had this question the last couple of days. People are like, duh, where's the basketball content? I love basketball. I also, with the Savannah Bananas job, it's this weird thing of the Big 12 plays basketball like 7 days a week now. And during football season, man, I'd stay up every Saturday until 3 o'clock in the morning. And whatever. I mean, I'll do shows and make sure that on your Sunday morning, you get the best in content. With basketball, it's going to be kind of sporadic. Like sometimes it'll be a Tuesday show, sometimes a Thursday show, just based on availability of me not staying up until midnight to watch a basketball game on a school night. Then obviously, getting up and doing the Drake Toll Show, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern time on Westwood One and the Westwood One Sports app. So yeah, it's not like, he's avoiding basketball because so-and-so team lost, because Texas Tech lost. He's avoiding basketball. Like, no, I talk basketball whenever I can because I love that. It's my preferred sport, actually. So I don't know. It's just like a PSA. It's just me telling you things, being transparent and honest. All right. BYU, Utah. Sorry, man. You guys got kind of screwed. Locked On Big 12. TJ, let's go.
Did the Big 12 make a mistake with the Holy War this year? Maybe that's the best place to start this thing.
Yeah, man. Over the weekend, my good friend Derek Duke from Heartland College Sports released an article that got me thinking, and I think he nailed this. The Big 12 failed. The Big 12 failed BYU. The Big 12 failed Utah, and it's not the first time, but the biggest failure here is the schedule. It's the fact that games like Baylor and Texas Tech aren't played every year that bother me. TCU and Houston aren't played every year. You're not going to see Arizona play Colorado every year, and you probably should. The Big 12 told you they don't want to do that. But now they've gone a step further, and instead of making all things good and fun and happy, they put the Holy War probably on the worst weekend you could schedule it. November 7th of 2026 is when we'll see this game played. And to Derek's point, that is the same Saturday as Oregon, Ohio State, Miami, Notre Dame, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Ole Miss, Oklahoma at Florida. I'm not done. Michigan State at Michigan, Penn State and Washington. And then somewhere in that mix is BYU and Utah. Now, TJ, this year, how crazy would it have been if Rivalry Weekend we had a top 15 matchup between BYU and Utah, and the winner of that game now has a brand new case for making the college football playoffs, especially if BYU wins that game. Instead, those two teams ended their years with kind of lackluster games against teams you didn't care about. I think BYU played UCF in a blowout that got down 14 and then blew them out there toward the end. Like, okay. The committee didn't care. They weren't watching that game. They were watching Alabama play in a rivalry game against Auburn and win in gritty fashion, or LSU play Oklahoma even though LSU had fired their coach and sucked. That didn't matter. What mattered were the brands that were playing, and the Big 12 just said, hey, we're scared of Rivalry Week. We don't want to play on Rivalry Week because there are too many games we have to compete against. Oh, but also, let's play the same weekend as Georgia and Ole Miss or Alabama, LSU, Oregon, Ohio State. TJ, this is just a really good way to bury your number one rivalry game and a game that could be the biggest contest in the conference every year.
We talk about the shifting landscape of college football, and I think the job of a commissioner is incredibly difficult, and we've given Brett Yormark plenty of praise, and so I don't know that he's the one that has final say on scheduling decisions, but he employs the person that does, so ultimately it all falls up under him. Last year we talked about how it was a good thing that BYU and Utah weren't on Rivalry Weekend and how they got a standalone matchup, which helped with ratings. I think not just from the ratings perspective, but something that you brought up that is so key is you have to adjust based on the current landscape, and you have to do things that help your program or programs, if you're a commissioner, best be set up for success. Florida State and Miami fans, I promise I'm getting to a point here, hate the fact that combined they play 8 games on a non-traditional Saturday. Miami plays 3 on Friday. They play 1 on Thursday. Florida State plays 3 on Friday, 1 on a Monday, which is the Labor Day night game. Like, there's some excitement around that. But for traditional college football fans that just like Saturday football, which Saturday, my entire day is devoted to college football. So I'm a little annoyed by that as a fan. But the ACC very rarely makes good decisions, and fans of those two teams are still pissed because they don't care about what I'm about to tell you. The ACC understands that they can't go head to head when Florida State plays SMU or when Miami plays Wake Forest or just whomever. Nobody watches those games, right? Fans of those teams watch those games. Now, when Miami plays Florida State, that's a game that the nation watches, right? Like, people want to see what happens there. It's bigger than just a regular week in the ACC. So whether you love the ACC or hate the ACC, Florida State plays Louisville on a Friday night. They play Pittsburgh on a Friday night. They play SMU on a Monday night. People are going to tune in and watch that because Florida State's brand will dictate they do. You know when people wouldn't tune in and watch FSU Louisville? If it was up against LSU Bama, if it was up against Miami Notre Dame, if it was up against Oklahoma versus Texas, because that's just not as good of a draw, right? Florida State Miami, maybe that's as good of a draw. So the ACC, I think, did a good job of pivoting to that, even though it pisses off some fans because it's harder to get to games or Friday nights. It's weird. That's high school night. I get it. The Big 12 had an opportunity here to say, hey, let's not stack the biggest hyped game of our season. Like the game that undoubtedly, even with where it falls on the schedule, it'll probably still get the best ratings, I would imagine, of the Big 12 season. Well, you know, if somebody wants to cold takes that later because you're a fan of a WVU game or something like that, then that's fine. But the game that'll probably get the best ratings, they had an opportunity to pivot that to somewhere else. Even if it wasn't Rivalry Weekend, if you played that somewhere else and didn't stack it up against a loaded schedule. And not only that, the rating side of it, I know I'm going long-winded here, not only the rating side of it, but I think it is so key what you just mentioned. The Big 12 is so disrespected and has to be on the front of people's minds. There would be no better way than an 11-0 BYU or a 10-1 BYU taking on a 9-2 or a 9-2 Utah, and the winner of that game getting a signature win before they go play in the Big 12 championship, so that the winner of that game has an opportunity to go have 2 signature top 15 wins in a row heading into the playoff, and in that moment cannot be left out. Or if they lose to, let's say Texas Tech runs the table again or something like that. If they lose to a Texas Tech, they just had the signature win the week before that bumped them up. Again, not that people will be tuned out of it on November 7th, but from November 7th to December 5th, when the playoff rankings will be announced, that's a long time. And I think the Big 12 missed an opportunity here to not only have a ratings monster that would be even bigger, but also put the winner of this game in a much better light with the rankings coming out just a week and a half later.
Yeah, I love that you brought up kind of last year our sentiment being different. I don't want to be Paul Feinbaum here and tell you 2 different things and a year later be like, what? I never said that. We did. We said that Rivalry Weekend maybe wasn't the most strategic play. We were wrong. I was wrong. Like this year, I thought, and it makes sense in my head, and it makes sense when I explain it, that if BYU beats Utah and has 4 games to go, or Texas Tech beats Arizona State and has 4 games to go, they can win those 4 games that are easier, and they get to ride off into the sunset and be a really good piece. A really good piece for the college football playoff, while teams like Alabama play tough competition to lose. But this year it didn't happen that way. BYU had the cushion of 3 games to win and go on a win streak at the end of the year. They had the cushion to go and win competitions after that Texas Tech matchup, but it didn't really move them in the rankings at all. They didn't have a signature end-of-year moment. If they had played Utah, if Utah had played BYU that last weekend, either team that wins gets their signature moment, while Alabama beat Auburn, but Auburn sucks. And Oklahoma beat LSU, but LSU sucks. And at least we got another top 15 win in the Big 12. So this is a bigger conversation than just BYU and Utah. This is a conversation about how the Big 12 schedules across the board. Like Texas Tech and Arizona State is a marquee game this year that a lot of folks will be tuned into. I don't think you need to bury it in the middle of the season. Let's play these games on rivalry weekends so you have one last big win that puts a good taste in the mouth of the committee. And you know what, TJ? If you lose that game, you probably didn't need to be in the playoff anyway. I don't think we should be scared of playing these games on rivalry weekend because, oh no, what if they lose their last game? We knock themselves out of the playoff. Just go win. Trust your teams to win. Trust Texas Tech or BYU or Utah or Arizona State or Houston to win. And if Brett Yormark does that, the Big 12 will be in much better shape.
It's certainly an interesting conversation. I wonder how it changes over the years. I wonder if there is a realization, if for some reason the BYU-Utah numbers are not as good as they were last year, right? If, the team's records could have an impact if you have a team limping into that game, or maybe things don't go as well at Utah with Scally, like you think they might, that'll have an impact. But if both teams are still pretty highly ranked and it's still kind of a highly contested matchup and the ratings are not good, and again, if one of these two teams, the winner of this game, kind of gets the BYU treatment again and gets left right outside of the playoff because it's the Big 12, do you start to adjust and say, man, we got to stack some signature wins late? Because you can see what that does for other programs when they get big wins late. Oklahoma beats Bama on the road. Boom. They're automatically a lock to be in this thing. And that happens other places too. Oregon beats USC late in the year. Boom. They're a lock. They're automatically in this thing. So I am interested to see if the Big 12 adjusts or not. I think Yormark does a phenomenal job with the situation that he's in, kind of competing against the propaganda machine of ESPN. But will he continue to do that and put his better games in a better spot? So
today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen, these remind us of everyday moments that actually raise the bar. And this week, it was West Virginia women's basketball with the highlight of the week. Another top 15 win, and in Big 12 play against the Baylor Bears at home, and a top 15 win by double digits, snapping an 8-game Bears win streak. That's the extra work it takes off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and saying, I never quit. That's exactly what West Virginia women's basketball did this week, and that's pretty awesome, by the way. They are fun to root for and a fun team to watch in an NCAA tournament juggernaut if they keep it up. So, Mazda puts the same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you with Mazda. Hey, right before we jump into Texas Tech, BYU leading the way on the athletics preseason way too early poll. Want to let you know, thanks for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you haven't already, check out our Everydayer Club. Ad-free Locked On Big 12 every single day. LockedOnBig12.supercast.com. LockedOnBig12.supercast.com for the biggest fans of Locked On Big 12. LockedOnBig12.supercast.com. Tap that link in the show notes or go visit that link to become an Everydayer. TJ, let's rock.
Drake, a little bit of a shift coming in the Big 12 this year. I know that it was TTU's conference this year. Could it be BYU's next year? The Athletics certainly think so.
Yeah, interesting. Greg Wrubell, who is the voice of the BYU Cougars, posted the Athletics poll they did internally with their staff. And, okay. I'm going to do this. Look, I get it. I'm wearing a BYU hat today. It was given to me for free. It's a really cool hat. And obviously, I support the BYU Cougars because they win and they're easy to root for in Big 12 play. They become a massive brand. There is no way There is no way. And look, again, I will say this with love. Everybody sit down, and I'm going to say it slowly. There is no way this league belongs to anyone except for Texas Tech until proven otherwise. The Athletic, their internal vote, 13 votes for first place BYU out of the Big 12 to be in the college football playoff and win this conference. They're actually, BYU was third in the nation in their internal vote on teams that missed the playoff in 2025 but will make the playoff in 2026 with Notre Dame and Texas right there beside the Cougars. That's pretty cool. But this Big 12 poll specifically, 13 votes for BYU, 11 for Texas Tech, 2 for Houston, 1 for Arizona, 1 for Arizona State. I do think there's a very good chance that is the top 5 next year in the Big 12. I could certainly see that. But BYU, as good as I think they'll be with linebacking core, the best linebacking core in the Big 12, and Bear Bachmeier back at quarterback, and the way that they have revamped offensively by not having to reload and just bringing everybody back, that's cool. Parker Kingston, LJ Martin, that's cool. But Texas Tech is the best team in the Big 12. They beat BYU by double digits both times this year. And you know what, TJ? I think most BYU fans would agree with this, that it is Texas Tech's league until somebody else takes it from them. And I'm just not sure if I understand why the Athletic put BYU above Texas Tech. And honestly, I think Houston even should get a little bit more love than they're receiving in polls like this.
When you look at BYU's schedule and Texas Tech's schedule, what's hard about this is Texas Tech has it set up pretty well to have a nice season. And I do think BYU's is a little bit tougher. Not that they've ever backed down from a challenge, not that they don't welcome it and say, bring it on, man. We're either going to be good or not. Let's play who we have to play. But that may be the most surprising part to me. Now, I understand that Bear Bachmeier coming back is a big deal, and the Sorsby coming in is a question mark. I don't know that it's a complete certainty. But, man, when I look at the schedules, if you let me pick which schedule I wanted to play, I would probably lean Texas Tech. That's not trying to be scared, but, man, I want to rank up as many wins as I can.
BYU plays Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame's in the middle of that schedule, and they might win that game as a marquee game, but Texas Tech's not having to play Notre Dame. They play Oregon State, Washington State. Texas Tech's going to be okay. BYU's non-conference, they go to Colorado State, who will be revamped this year. They play Notre Dame, who's a top 10 team. Like, TJ, that kind of sucks. Like, that's not fun. They have the games against, all the powers. Utah, Cincinnati, Baylor, with DJ Lagway there now. Iowa State, Arizona State. Well, I guess Iowa State lost just about everybody on their team, so maybe I'll scratch them off the idea. But at TCU, it's a tough schedule. And I know everybody in the Big 12, we talk about parity, we talk about all those things. But, it is not easy. And so, that is really interesting to me that they have them won. Are they just trying to be different? Are they just trying to do what people accuse us of trying to clickbait people into it and get us talking? I mean, they did their job. If so, get us talking about it in early February. Maybe. And I think a piece of this they are looking at, and if you asked, On Three is who did it, the talent composite they've built based on who transferred out, who's graduating, who's going to the NFL draft versus who came in from the freshman ranks, the transfer portal ranks. BYU and Texas Tech are two of the top teams in the Big 12, right there with Houston, actually, for gaining more than they lost. The war of attrition, the positive attrition that they found in their programs. Yeah, BYU lost a few guys. Texas Tech lost a few guys, but they weren't really big contributors last year, and they weren't going to be huge contributors this next season. The coaching staff was retained for Texas Tech. For BYU, you kept your head coach, and now you feel like you've got an upstart defensive coordinator who's going to replace Jay Hill just fine. I do like these two teams at the top of the conference, and you already mentioned the schedule. I think the Big 12 schedule, the way it looks for Texas Tech, is cake. I mean, and I want everyone at Texas Tech to understand when I say that it's not. I have no offense. I'm not mad at you. That's not a bad thing. You should rejoice in that. You should be a Texas Tech fan like, yeah, we got a great shot to go undefeated this year, win the Big 12 all over again. It's a good thing for you that some of your toughest games, like Houston and Arizona State, will be home games. Arizona will be a home game. TCU is a home game. Your road matchups, Oklahoma State, we don't know what they'll be this year. Cincinnati, we don't know what they'll be this year. Colorado, we don't think they're going to be very good this year. For Texas Tech, they're okay. For BYU, I think what the Athletic is doing here is they're saying, oh, look at all the continuity. And I love continuity. But, TJ, we also have to remember, BYU played a lot of one-score games last year. They played a lot of one-score games and a lot of come-from-behind games where they had to go win it gritty late. Georgia Tech was the apex of that in their bowl game, and it felt like the same script of their entire season. Most of the time. Now, I want to also say BYU played a lot of one-score games in 2024. Didn't mean that 2025 they were bad. Everybody's like, oh, one-score games are going to flip. They're going to suck. They didn't. They were very good at winning one-score games again. But at some point, what goes up must come down. And when it comes down, BYU still may be 9-3 or 10-2. But I do think having them at number one above Texas Tech doesn't sit right with me and should not be the case right now.
I also wonder, teams are not the same year over year. And so you can't say that, just because this happened last year, that it's going to happen again next year. I do expect BYU to, well, they don't play them in the regular season, but if they were to play them in Arlington, I would expect that game to be a little closer, though Texas Tech kind of had their way both times. And I do like the Sorsby pickup. But I also wonder, man, like, unfortunately for BYU, which I wanted BYU to win that Big 12 championship game. I wanted to see them both in the playoff. So I was openly rooting for BYU. I think everybody in the conference was, maybe with the exception of Texas Tech specifically, and maybe Utah too. I did want to see BYU win that. So all that said, I also, man, these teams were not necessarily close. Like Texas Tech was head and shoulders over everybody in the Big 12 last year. And so to think that they either drop off enough or BYU rises enough to, in February, do this. Now, if we got through spring, and we got through summer, maybe even that first month of the season, and we said, yeah, these two teams do look a little different, I could certainly say, yeah, BYU might be your favorite right now. But to do it this early, I don't know, feels interesting to me. Feels off.
Yeah. I am, and also that's a big piece of this is the way too early rankings just are way too early. That's the beauty of it. You look at the on-3 ranking, they have LSU above BYU. LSU sucked last year. They lost to a Big 12 team in their bowl game. That there are teams that are being overvalued. Michigan, TJ, Michigan and Utah on that on-3 composite were number 68 and 69 respectively in the country in talent they brought in versus talent that left the program. Like both those schools lost a lot of good guys, and both those schools lost their head coach, and they failed in the transfer portal to make a bunch of splashes with 5-star players and a myriad of 4-star players. So there's a big question mark around Michigan. There's a big question mark around Utah, but still in these way too early rankings, number 13 Michigan, number 15 Utah. You're like, all right, okay. The brand, and it's good for the Big 12 that Utah has a brand good enough to be ranked in the top 25 almost. They were 5-7 in 2024 and were ranked in the top 25 in 2025 going into the year. And they should have been, and they backed that up. But these way too early rankings are exactly that. They're far too early for us to deduce anything. I think the Athletic will realize here in a few months, oh no, Texas Tech is still Texas Tech. Oh, baby, today's show is brought to you by Indeed. Look, man, Indeed is the spot to go. Indeed's super easy. You can download the app. You can go to their website, and I do it pretty frequently, actually, just to see what's out there. Because hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. Indeed sponsored jobs is the move where you can find quality candidates to work for you. I am looking for a brand new intern for Locked On Big 12. Indeed's the spot to do that. It's where I'm going to do that. Skills, certifications, location. It makes it really easy for me to find the right candidate within like 12 hours. I'm hiring. I don't want just someone who can help. I want someone with real experience who can jump right in. Here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get the job the premium status you need. Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed.
We've known that things are slipping in the SEC. We did 2 shows on it last week. They haven't been in the national championship in 3 years now. In fact, every major conference, as well as Notre Dame, has been in a national championship game more recently than the SEC. And I think it's starting. No, I don't think. Let me take that back. Scratch that. I think that it's starting to have an impact on recruiting. The SEC now no longer has the most 5-stars coming in on this class. Pete Akos tweeted, the Big Ten has 13 5-stars coming in, the SEC with 11, Notre Dame, Big 12, ACC, kind of round that out with the last 8. There are 32 5-stars, and we've always talked about how good the talent was in the SEC. this year at least, and there are transfers and a lot of other things that factor in, this year at least when it comes to high school signees, more talent going away from the SEC than ever before.
Here's the deal, TJ. I grew up in Arkansas. I grew up an SEC guy. I remember where I was when I think Ashley Judd came on the first episode of SEC Storied on night one of the SEC Network. I was there when they turned the lights on. And you know what? After I left, after I went to college, still in Texas, still around SEC country, after I moved to Georgia, which is the heart of SEC country with the Bulldogs out here, I realized the SEC is just not what I thought it was. They're not what I was taught that the conference is. They're not the juggernaut that is painted to all of Americans and shoved down your throats. And what they've had to lean on, TJ, is we haven't been to the national championship, but we've got really good draft picks. This year, the Big Ten is projected to have a majority of the top 10, top 15 draft picks, and the SEC may only have a couple that go in the first round, especially in that top 10. There are some draft boards that don't have a single SEC player going in the top 10 because guys like David Bailey from Texas Tech, Romello Height from Texas Tech, or anybody on the defensive line of Miami, they're up there. And quarterback like Fernando Mendoza, he's up there, and he's not an SEC guy. What we're seeing is the NFL draft is starting to shift. And they say, well, yeah, but being we're the best conference in America in recruiting. Well, shoot. I mean, TJ, you just told me that the majority of 5-stars are actually going to the Big Ten and that the other conferences are also picking up steam. And honestly, Notre Dame is having a more successful recruiting class or shake-it recruiting with these 5-stars than probably anybody in the country. They're not an SEC program. Less and less kids, less and less elite talent is deciding to go play in the SEC. Less and less elite talent is being developed and coming from the SEC in the NFL draft. So you know what? Look, you can say, man, I wonder if it gets tiring for these guys to come on every week and tell us that, oh, the SEC's bad now, oh, the SEC's falling apart. You know what? It's not tiring. Because at some level, at some point, I sit here and it's not even me trying to be, I'm going to make this up. I'm going to clickbait. I'm going to grift. I'm going to make this all painted picture of how the SEC's bad, even though they're not. But honestly, like, I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the wins and losses. I'm looking at their bowl record this year. There's not a single metric that says the SEC is the best conference in college football. The Big 12 beat up the SEC in the bowl season. The Big 10 beat up the SEC in the bowl season. The Big 10 is going to beat up the SEC when it comes to the NFL draft. They're already doing it in recruiting. TJ, this is just not what the SEC was. And 15 years ago, before they were shoving it down your throat and telling you they were the best, when they actually were the best 15 years ago, it was fine. It was dandy. Can I say something crazy? I liked rooting for Nick Saban. I love greatness. I love greatness. I love watching those Alabama teams because I thought, you know what? I wish I was a fan of that. I wish that was my team. That is greatness. Now it insists upon itself. Before you even see them play, they want to let you know we're the best. And then when they lose, like, we're still the best, until Paul Feinbaum had that apology where he's like, sorry, buddy, I didn't
say something. I like all football. Like, I'm a psychopath. I went to the FCS National Championship in Nashville a few weeks ago.
Unreal game, by the way. Such a good game.
I like football. Like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I've never watched a football game and thought like, oh man, this was great. Dude, I'm the same guy that will watch every SEC game. Like, I watch these stupid Thursday and Friday night ACC games when Wake is playing NC State. Like, I watch that, and then I'll stay up until 10:30 to watch BYU play the late game, right? Like, all of that is okay with me. I'm good with all of it. All the way down to that FCS level. Go Montana State. I need to buy the shirt that I said I would buy a few weeks ago. But all that said, I've never watched a game and thought, oh man, I'm going to watch this game only because of the conference affiliation or the conference. Like, I'm not that guy. Like, I want to watch all of it. I enjoy a ton of football. And so we are getting to a point where, like you said, every single metric is trying to tell you right now that the SEC has been supplanted as the top conference for a while. And even many times this year, I told you the reason the SEC gets the benefit of the doubt is because they do have the talent, right? We can see that in recruiting rankings, and we can see that in the NFL draft. If you recruit the best players out of high school and then you put the best players into the NFL, yes, you probably are a more talented team. The thing that got lost, and the one metric you didn't mention, is coaching and how much coaching matters and how you can see where good coaches are. The SEC still has plenty of good coaches. I'm not trying to make an argument that they don't. They arguably just got the best group of 5 guy when they pulled John Summerall Summerall from Tulane to go to Florida. They got a guy that in my backyard, Alex Golish, very highly thought of to go to Auburn. They still have good coaches. There's no doubt. But when you look at the coaching turnover and you look at how many coaches weren't cutting it there, you start to say, okay, well, maybe they shouldn't get the talent advantage benefit of the doubt because talent alone does not a good team make. Look at Clemson this year. Look at Florida State this year. Look at LSU this year. Look at Auburn this year. Very talented teams on paper, couldn't put it together. Coaching's a real thing. It is a real problem. The Big 10, the Big 12, other places, a lot of stability that people can go out and look at from a coaching perspective. Look at some of the best hires that were made this year. I think Florida did a good job with Summerall. Lane Kiffin, obviously that's kind of its own one situation, stayed SEC to SEC. Look at Matt Campbell. People are ecstatic about him being in Happy Valley. Look at Michigan, pulling Kyle Whittingham. Look at what the ACC was able to do, pulling in James Franklin, leaving Virginia Tech or leaving Penn State to go to Virginia Tech. Coaching matters a ton. And I think that when you look at every single metric, all the ones you looked at and the SEC, the coaching side of things too, that is where they're lacking. Now, let's be very fair. There's still a really good conference. There are still really good players in that conference. I think Texas is going to be a good team this year. I think Georgia is going to be a good team this year. Even if Alabama falls off the map, they're probably looking at like worst case 8-4. There are 100 programs in this country that would kill for a worst case 8-4. I get it. I think LSU will be fine. I think Oklahoma will be fine this year. They'll still have teams that are in and above and competing. And all of those teams that I just mentioned will put a lot of guys into the NFL draft. Just not quite the head and shoulders above everybody else that they used to be. And they certainly, by every metric, other than Booger McFarland, who I just saw on a clip the other day, you can't even find SEC homers that will continue to tell you that they are the best conference. My buddy Cole that I do the show with, who works for SEC Unfiltered, literally covers the SEC, has said on every show that we've done since the Indiana game, we're not the best conference anymore. You could find the most diehard SEC guy out there, and they'll tell you that, there's been a changing of the guard.
Even Paul Feinbaum. If Paul Feinbaum's saying it, hell.
How did I forget him?
Hell is frozen over here. Look, on the one hand, it'd be fun to really rub it in. I don't think we've been snarky about it here. We've just been pretty objective and honest. This is more of a PSA to just, hey, Big 12 fans, ACC fans, Big 10 fans, we get it. Like those guys over there, crazy guys in the corner that are like, we're the best. Like everybody, we all agree. They're not. We all understand it. I think slowly but surely SEC fans are coming around on that idea as well. Just being like, you know what? Yeah, we haven't really won a lot here recently. Sorry, guys. Maybe we'll just pick it up and try the whole bootstraps thing again. Be hardworking again. College football runs through the South, and it'll feel different. But TJ, Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, all three have one thing in common. National champions from the Big Ten, and they're the last three of them where the SEC didn't even compete in that title game. That's saying a lot. And look, you're talking about a conference with Ryan Silverfield and Jeff Lebby as head coaches in that league. It's not all roses in the Southeastern League.
The thing I think the SEC did so well was marketing. Yeah. It just means more, and the way they marketed themselves is like it being different was so good for that conference, and it was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that they spoke it into existence. I think there are also some things, Pate's talked about this, others have talked about this, because they got to the throne and then they stopped doing the things that mattered, like development and like coaching. And because NIL got introduced and other people got to start paying players too, legally, I think that's where they fell behind. They were more worried about being sexy and SEC speed and the way that it looked, that they lost some of that hardworking, what makes the southeastern part of the United States, right? Like what makes the Midwest great? Well, they're hard workers. They get the job done. The southeastern football had that very much that mantra of like, no, we are going to grind you out. Remember SEC defense? Remember when that was a thing? Nobody wanted to play against an SEC front. Some of that hardworking culture value type stuff just isn't the case anymore. And they've got to get back to that.
They're giving them Lamborghinis in Austin, man. They're giving them Lamborghinis.
Not quite the vibe that I think SEC fans were used to. Most SEC fans that live in Athens, Georgia, and Knoxville, Tennessee, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and Gainesville, Florida are not interested in flash or Lamborghinis or marketing or excitement. They want tough, hard-nosed football. That's what I think the SEC lost, and they've got some work to do to get back to it. It can change. It can change very quickly if you hire the right coaches and you get the right kids in, but they're playing behind the 8-ball right now, and we'll see if they can turn it around. Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your content?
At Locked On Big 12, wherever you find your podcasts, and on YouTube, and at Drake C. Toll every day.